My name is Kate Narita. Today is day 18 of my summer 2019 Bookaday Challenge. I will be talking about The Unsung Hero of Birdsong USA by Brenda Woods. I always love it when I find a new author that I'm excited about, and I will definitely be reading more books by Brenda Woods. In The Unsung Hero, the 12-year-old main character's name is Gabriel, and he's Caucasian. He's riding his bike one day, and he would have been hit by a car had it not been for an African American man who pushes him out of harm's way. It turns out the African American man is Meriwether Hunter. And as the friendship grows between Gabriel and Mr. Hunter, Gabriel discovers that Mr. Hunter served in World War II in the 761st Tank Battalion, which was a highly decorated battalion. However, not only were African American war heroes not celebrated, they were in danger if they talked at all about serving in the armed forces. This is a very important topic, and I've never seen it talked about before in a middle grade novel. You may remember in day 6 of my Bookaday Challenge, I talked about the Lions of Little Rock. The Unsung Hero of Birdsong would go well with any of those books, but I want to take some time to remind you about 3 of them. So all 3 of these books are nonfiction titles. Hidden Figures and Counting on Catherine are picture books, and they feature the African American women who helped us reach the moon. And then Almost Astronauts tells the story of 13 women who tried to be astronauts but were denied the opportunity because of their gender. Another nonfiction title I want to talk about that I did not talk about in day 6 is Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen? This is by another author, Sherry Smith, and I also plan to read more of her work. I'll talk about that later on. Anyways, this is a fantastic book, and I will be getting it from my classroom for a couple of different reasons. So it has these great sidebars. It has a sidebar that explains what the Jim Crow laws are, and I think that's really important for students to understand when they're learning about civil rights. It also has 2 fantastic timelines side by side at the back of the book, one for the Tuskegee Airmen and one for the world. So students can really see what's going on simultaneously with these 2 groups of people. So who were the Tuskegee Airmen? They were an all African American unit. They flew these small planes, which were called red tails, and they protected the pilots who were flying bombers. This is near and dear to my heart because my paternal grandfather, who immigrated here when he was 9 years old from Mexico, flew in bombers during World War II. So who knows? His life may have been protected by one of these brave men. So what's great, in addition to the facts about the Jim Crow laws and the timelines, is that it really gives readers an introduction to African Americans in flight. So the first African American who became a pilot was Eugene Bullard in 1917. He actually flew in France and fought against the Germans in World War I. And then Bessie Coleman was the first African American woman pilot. She also learned how to fly in France, and she became the first African American woman pilot in 1921. So this book is a great introduction not only to civil rights, but to the fantastic history of service of African American pilots. Next up, I want to talk about Dive by Deborah Hopkinson. This is a nonfiction title geared toward older readers. However, on pages 144 through 147, she features African American men who served in the Navy, and the first African American man to earn a Naval Cross in World War II was Dory Miller. So we get to learn about him, and then also we get to learn that there wasn't a commander, an African American commander of a U.S. naval submarine until 1983, and that was Captain Peter Zelms. So there's only a few pages here dedicated to African American men, but it really highlights their bravery and also the discrimination they faced within the U.S. Navy. Another nonfiction title for older readers I want to talk about is Black Eagles. And this is a fantastic resource because it tells you when African Americans first started flying and takes you all the way up to the history of 1990s. The book was published in 1995, so it doesn't go any further than that. But once again, we learn about Eugene Bullard and Bessie Coleman, and then it takes us up to the first African American man in space, which was in 1983. And that was Lieutenant Colonel Bluford. And then the first African American woman in space, and that was 1992, and that was Mae Jemison. So again, this is another great resource to have as a reference in your classroom for your students who are interested in learning more about how African Americans served our country in the armed forces. I always like to throw a picture book in with my text sets, as you know. So I'm going to recommend Chester Nez and the Unbreakable Code, a Navajo code talker story. Obviously, this is not about African Americans, obviously. However, it is about other minorities who served in the armed forces and were discriminated against. What's pretty amazing about this nonfiction picture book biography is much like the African Americans, the Navajo code talkers were told not to talk about their service in the Army. So these people who gave up so much of their lives were unable to be celebrated and could not talk about it whatsoever at all. In 2001, the Navajo tribe was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And then I had no idea about this. I knew about the Navajo code talkers, but in 2013, 33 other Native American tribes were recognized for their services in World War I and World War II. And in 2013, 25 of those tribes also received Congressional Medals of Honor, and 2 more received Congressional Medals of Honor after 2013. So right now I want to talk about 3 historical fiction novels. These are also for older readers that take place during World War II that also feature the topic of minorities and or women serving in the armed forces. So the first one is 442 by Dean Hughes, and this tells the story of the dedicated and decorated Unit 442 of the Army that was composed entirely of Japanese American citizens. So it's historical fiction, but still you get the gist of what this group of people did for our country. And finally, I want to talk about 2 historical fiction novels that feature females in the war. So the first one is by Sherry Smith. I haven't read Fly Girl. However, she is the same person who wrote Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen, which is fantastic. And I definitely will be reading Fly Girl now that I know about it. And last, I want to talk about Codename Verity. Again, this is a novel for your older readers, people in high school. This is one of my favorite novels of all time. Every time I read it, I am inspired by the characters' dedication and bravery. It's more impressive than any other person or character I've ever read about in my entire life. So highly recommend Codename Verity, and I cannot wait to read Fly Girl by Sherry Smith. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, you can contact me at Kate Narita or www.katenarita.com. As always, thanks to Slides Carnival and Unsplash for the slide templates and the photos. Have a great day.